Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm David.
And this is the Practical Guitarist Podcast.
The podcast for people who eat, sleep, and breathe guitar. Hi, Jim.
Hi, David.
So one of these days I'm going to call you Gene instead, so I can be like, hi, Gene.
Hi, Paul.
That's so terrible to say hi, Gene.
Hygiene.
It's
hygienic, though. It's very hygienic.
Yeah, I have good hygiene. So
Yes.
I'm very, very, very picky about, my soaps and all that. I use military soaps, Jim.
You do?
Yeah, I went and I got, so this is really not good for this podcast, but I'll say it anyway. What do they call it? It's a type of soap that they sell at Duluth Trading Company, and it's freaking, it's like a big ass brick of soap or something like that. But it's all the military, like the old Korean War soaps. And yeah, it's pretty harsh, but I like it. It smells good. So I am really sounding odd and awkward here. It's good.
Yeah.
Good podcasting. So we're all doing some different stuff now. I mean, I'm working on a lesson book. That's going to be the subject of this episode. What do you got going on?
I've been working on the one of my lesson books, working on my fretboard freedom, and I may be joining another band. I don't know.
How's you probably can't give additional details at this point, right?
No, because I still gotta. One is a country band that I'm going to audition for, and another is a pop, like an all-around pop band. Mm-hmm. I'm more interested in the all-around pop band because they want to play more often, and that's really where my goals lie.
Yeah, even though the previous band, you're like, I only want to gig like twice a week or something.
Well, that's because 2 or 3 times a month. But I was singing lead in that band.
Yeah,
There's a lot of work in that.
Oh yeah,
especially the high notes I was hitting. I could have done it every weekend. I had no problem with that. But if you said to me, Jim, I need you to do Friday, Saturday, that would be a little difficult.
Your voice is blown out, after one gig, and I get you. So,
yeah, I was singing 27, 30 songs of the 40-something songs we did.
I guess I should do my housekeeping, right?
Yes.
We are going to switch to pre-recorded housekeeping. I haven't done it yet, so I'll go ahead and throw it in here. Are you a regular listener? Why not? Subscribe to The Practical Guitarist using your chosen podcast app. Take the time to put in a review with the service where you found our podcast, like iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or Google Play. Get involved. Find our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/practicalguitarist. You can also find us on Twitter as @PractGuitarist. If you're interested in supporting the show, we've launched a Threadless store at practicalguitaristpodcast.threadless.com. If you'd like to donate to us directly, you can do so at Patreon, which the version of the notes I have in front of me right now do not have the Patreon address. It is up in the group. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can do so at questions@practicalguitarist.com. So, I think it's patreon.com/practicalguitarist. But,
yeah.
Anyway, we have people donating to the show. We're very thankful to them.
Yes, we are.
I believe we have some money sitting in that account. We probably should go. I should get that over to you so you can pay the hosting fees. There's been a lot of stuff going on in the last. There's been a lot of stuff going on the last couple of weeks. So, Jim is pointing at me. Did I do something?
No, you keep it.
I'm not keeping it. You kidding me? We need to pay the hosting fees. Actually,
yeah, but you bought the cards and the shirt, so balance.
Don't care. It's cards and a shirt. All right, whatever.
See, we're like two guys fighting over who's going to pay for lunch.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is. This is Jim and me meeting in the middle of age, right? So, because I'm the younger guy and he's the older guy, we're meeting in the middle of the age, and we're deciding to argue with each other about who's going to pay for dinner.
Yep.
See, I usually pull the Larry David and just leave the table when that happens because I got to go wash my hands. But,
yep.
No, I don't do that. But that's besides the point.
Not me.
Anyway, as we're here sitting talking, last week's episode, we talked about some technique stuff on on a Thursday episode. I recall somebody got very bitterly angry. And
I don't remember who that was. I'm trying to remember.
And I remember it was about
we go into the past. Now you fly in the part where you were screaming at me.
No, I'd rather not. I'd rather not. If you make me do that, I might scream again. So I got a book actually the night, I believe it was the night we recorded, and I ordered it off of Amazon. And I got it, and I want to talk about the book for a minute. And it is Neoclassical Speed Strategies for Guitar, and it's the highest rated shred book that I could find on Yngwie style shred, right? Because there's different styles. We would all consider Steve Vai and Satriani and Paul Gilbert shred players, and they all have very distinctly different ways that they do it, both from the technical perspective and also from the style of music that they make too. So I got this book because this is the nearest and closest to my heart. I'm going to be seeing Yngwie on October 27th. I will probably have a review for the show when I do that. I'm working hard to see if I can get some special access to that gig. But as I'm looking at this book, what's really cool about it is we've talked about Troy Grady. I know we talked about him in the last episode. Troy Grady has been demystifying picking strategies for guitar players. And he's come up with at least a couple of strategies that are pretty much universal that almost all of these guys do. And one of them is also covered in this book, and that is downward pick slanting. Now, we talked about last week, and my rant was about the fact that people tend to mystify these things. They want to hide them behind a veil of pretty flowery language, and also I put my dues in, so I understand this and you don't, kind of stuff. The same thing that locksmiths used to do to people. This is not that book. That Troy Grady is not doing that thing. Okay, so what they're doing is they're saying, here is the surefire strategy to either A, sound like, and actually in this book, he goes beyond that, to sound like Yngwie, or to do it in a mechanically precise way. So Yngwie has some very peculiar ways in which he uses picking and legato, so hammer-ons and pull-offs, to accomplish what seems to be these slurry of picked notes are often not. They're often more legato than you would think. And they call it piccato in the text because it's not staccato. It's definitely not legato because there's, obviously he's using hammer-ons and pull-offs as part of these phrases, but he does it in a very tactile way, and it's also a way that allows him to be more efficient with the pick.
Well, I noticed that the book, the series, it's broken up into two books.
Yes.
There's Speed Strategies for Guitar that's neoclassical, and then there's Speed Strategies for Guitar that's sweep picking. Those are two very different techniques, and I'm actually surprised they don't have another one that is for alternate picking.
Well, so it is alternate. This is alternate.
Oh, that's alternate.
This covers alternate.
All right.
But it only covers neoclassical alternate, right? And then the sweep picking book, I kind of get why he wouldn't have to lump that together because pretty much everybody who sweep picks is doing it in an extremely similar way. There are a couple of different people, and I'm sure he probably and I'm going to get that book too, but I'm sure he probably covers guys. Trying to think, the guy that's at Carvin, Frank Gambale, he has a very unique way of doing it, and I'm sure he covers him differently in the book than say Yngwie or the other contemporaries that do that style of picking. But ultimately, what I got out of this book, I'm only like not even finished with the first chapter, and he spends probably 4 or 5 pages with a fairly concise explanation of downward pick orientation, which is what he calls it, but it's downward pick slanting. And I know on the last episode I had said, downward pick slanting didn't do a whole lot for me because it ruined my articulation. All right, so I was doing it wrong. And that's because I don't know whether it was the original videos I'd seen from Troy Grady were just set up this way or whether it was because I didn't fully understand what Troy Grady was trying to explain, like poor communication or poor, communications on both sides. It might be poor listening too. Or whether I was dead set and doing something else. Case in point, I had my metronome before I got the book set to 160 beats per minute. I've been running triplets. There's a little exercise, and I can post it in the group or whatever if anybody's interested. There's a little exercise that I guess came from Paul Gilbert that was handed to Robert Baker, and then Robert Baker put it on his YouTube channel. And I've just been using it as a way to gauge kind of where I'm at. And I immediately bumped this up 5 beats a minute, every couple repetitions that I could get perfect. And it was really quickly, I was hitting 190 beats per minute, 195 beats per minute in that zone. And I got to say, like, I literally physically could not go that fast doing it the way I was. And that was because I was flat picking. So my pick was oriented so it was a 90-degree angle to the body, which means I was just picking straight up and straight down. What pick slanting is, if you can imagine, you take your pick 90 degree to the body. So like if you had your guitar sitting on the table and you pick straight up and down, like you were going to pick the strings, and then you take it and you turn the pick about between 10 and 30 degrees north towards the ceiling or towards your abdomen if you have the guitar on the table, right?
Yep.
And you just pick that way. And literally, because you do that, and the way that the wrist has to he talks about pronation and supination, and I can't give the exact terminology of how he explains it, but because of the way that the wrist settles against the guitar, and the forearm contour, if you have one, it immediately means that the picking attack is going to pull the string away from the strings when it goes through. You're going to use less of the tip, which that's the thing that I think is the biggest bonus. But it's going to pull the pick away from the strings, and so therefore you will not get caught up when going from string to string. See,
that's what I'm afraid of. So I think it might be a good idea to throw up some video of that, because honestly, like maybe get someone that that can put the camera close.
I know just the person.
Yeah, so do I. That's why I was asking. And so if she can hold the camera close enough and get a good shot, and you can kind of not exaggerate the motion, but exaggerate it in slowness. Just show how the pick is oriented, and then show how your picking changes. And it's, it's really clear. If you watch any of Troy Grady's videos where he does a slow down motion, you can see it. Yeah. I mean, it's very obvious. But I always thought that when you pick naturally, even with the guitar pick 90 degrees, your natural inclination, because your index finger is longer than your thumb, is to pull the pick away from the body slightly. Right. But apparently it's not. Or if the motion isn't exaggerated enough for it to matter. And that may be more accurate. Now, the cool thing about this book is, and like I said, they demonstrate things that you wouldn't necessarily need in the Yngwie style of things, where you can actually do upward pick slanting. And I haven't heard Troy Grady talk about this one too much. But if you're doing a descending run, and you orient the pick, remember I said if you turn it towards you or the ceiling, depending on how you're holding the guitar, if it's on a table. Yep. If you go the other way, so between 10 and 30 degrees south, you can do descending runs, and you're literally just like dancing over the strings with the tip of the pick. And it's the clarity you get out of it is just stupid. And the thing is, because it more naturally matches, how fast your wrist can move, and all that, like it becomes a lot easier to become articulate. I by no means am fast at this yet, nor have I conquered the fact that I have to fight the technique I have right now. So this is the funny, stupid part about this. When I first started learning to play this kind of material, I think I learned Black Star years ago, and I can't play it now to save my life. I learned Black Star. Is that the Richie Blackmore thing?
No, Black Star is Yngwie's.
Oh, no, Yngwie, yeah.
That's the one that, if you're going to learn an Yngwie song, that's probably the one you should learn.
I think the reason that I thought it was Richie Blackmore is because he talked about how he got his inspiration from Black.
We're gonna get there because I want to talk about Richie Blackmore in this episode too. How
can you talk about Richie Blackmore and not laugh?
I understand. Well, like his current career is a joke.
I'm not talking about he's an incredible musician. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
So that's actually what I want to talk about. I want to talk about his personality more than anything. Because
that's just hilarious.
So you slant the pick upward, whatever, you can do it that way. You can go the other way with it. this book tells you Yngwie does not use upward pick slanting at all, ever. This book goes on to explain that he cheats. That there are, and I think I've already mentioned on the show, he uses what he calls pigado, which is like a way of him cheating, basically. But what gets me, all right, so there's a lot of guys that slam Yngwie, and they're like, oh, he's a shred ballerina. I've heard this term used with regard to him. And that people like Jason Becker were better than him. Listen, Jason Becker was an incredible fucking musician when he had the ability of his hands. And he's a great composer now. But the thing is, Becker was not playing the same kinds of music. He certainly was not a shred ballerina. I mean, I've seen clinics from him from the 80s that are just like, I just sit there and I cry because I'm like, I'll never be able to do this. There's just no fucking way.
Oh, yeah.
No person that walks the earth, is going to sit there and go, man, this is attainable.
What happened to him was very sad.
Sad. For those of you not aware, he has Lou Gehrig's or ALS.
He lives in Asia now, right? Because
I don't know.
I thought he was living in Japan. I know that he has
it's possible.
A full-time person that does nothing but take notes. And do translation for him so that he can get his compositions down before he passes away.
Yeah, it's possible. He's outlived every estimate of how long he's going to be around.
And I know that whatever people think of Kiesel gives a large part of the guitars that they sell for. Yeah,
specifically his solo model. So every year or so they do a special edition, and they donate a large portion of proceeds to Lou Gehrig's research or him directly for his care. Yeah, which is very cool. But anyway, with regards to Yngwie, so a lot of these guys will do things that is technically ferocious. And he's one of them, right? Master sweep picker, master alternate picker. But the thing about Jason Becker, when you watch his playing, is sometimes there's fireworks there. He does things in his playing just because they're difficult. And it's like, okay, watch this. I can do this. I don't think you can. And it's not that it's not musical. Like, you can do that and be musical. And that's the mastery genius of Jason Becker as a player. But the thing with Yngwie is he'll play things that are musical, and he'll find, like I said, he cheats. He found a way. Now, I guarantee you he could play it straight alternate picked, but he found a way to do it faster, more consistent, and in a way that allows him to, just kind of like exercise his muscle power, which is pretty impressive because he does a lot of improv too. So his whole technique is based around this idea of like knowing what he's going to do before he does it. Because, for example, he'll pick two notes and then he'll pull off to the third. And then if he does a 4-note run on the next string, he'll alternate pick the whole thing. And then he just knows instinctively, like, this is going to be a 4-note thing. So we'll just hit all 4 notes. And that's the basis of that pigado style. And he's developed it to the point where it's reflex. And I mean, honestly, when I try to do it, I sit there and I think, and I'm like, how do you know what pattern you're going to hit before you get there? Like, what is going on in this guy's head? And it's one thing if you do it with a composed piece of music, but when you're improvising, that's a whole nother animal. But I like this book. I wanted to recommend it to our listeners if they're interested because it's a style guide. And that's what I was looking for. I couldn't find a Hal Leonard or, any of the other major book companies' style guide to Yngwie's, playing. And I don't know why that is. I think it's maybe people are embarrassed to admit that they want to emulate somebody like that. Because Yngwie does have a lot of haters. There's a lot of people that I don't know. I don't want to say they're jealous of him because I think that's overgeneralizing. But I think there's a lot of people afraid of what he does in the sense that they don't necessarily understand why someone would do this. Because I've heard people say, "Oh, he just goes as fast as he can because it's unmusical." Listen, you slow Yngwie down, you listen to what he's doing. It's classical music. There's nothing unmusical about it. It just may not be your cup of tea, and that's okay. I've had many a debate with people on forums about stuff like that. So Jim knows about one the other night.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about that one.
I think the problem, and I'm not sure why this exists, there is definitely in the guitar community this my hero is better than yours. My guitar is better than yours. My gear is better than yours. And it wears on the brain. Honestly, I don't get it. You know, if you've got a guitar hero, whoever it is, you know, I don't care for anything that came out in the grunge period.
Yeah,
there's like 2 songs that I can listen to that. All those, you know, you keep the flannel shirts and all the stuff that went with it. I don't care. But that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate what they did or what the talent levels that were there. It's just it wasn't my bag. I just didn't like it.
Sure. I think that's part of it. I think we're in what is essentially been a male dominated thing for a very long time. It's now starting to those lines are starting to blend. And as we know, men tend to be the my dick is bigger than yours mentality. And so, you know, I think that plays a part of it. I think going back as far as like even within a genre, bands, you know, genre, same decade, people want to piss and moan about which band's better than one another. And, you know, music is not a competition, people. Like that's what I don't seem to understand about these kind of attitudes and behaviors is that music is not a competition. I don't berate Jim for doing things the way he does, and he doesn't berate me. We're not sitting here doing that.
Right.
I've never said, Jim, you're stupid for not listening to this band.
Yeah, he hasn't, not out loud.
No, I always think it. I think it a lot, but no. And the other thing is, like, somebody like Yngwie, you don't expect non-guitar players to be into these people. And I think there's a mentality, and I've seen it before, where it's like, I was working as a consultant in the IT world. We were having an office wired up, and the crew that did the office wiring, they did a lot of our projects, so I knew them, and they were not guitar players, but they were talking about Steve Vai, and I was like, this is weird. And I had this, you know, this is weird, but they're like, no, we like that kind of music. And I'm like, well, you don't play guitar though. You don't play an instrument. And it was kind of shocking to me that somebody outside of the guitar community would be aware of these people. He's like, well, my brother plays guitar. He listens to this. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So you've been exposed to it. Maybe that's why you like it, but not necessarily because you went out and sought it out yourself. And that's what I'm getting at. Like, I understand the guys that are out there that are, you know, poo-pooing on somebody like Satriani or Vai or Gilbert or insert your guitar hero of choice. Right. And they're like, nobody would actually listen to this music outside the genre. That's why they suck. And it's like, well, yeah, but I mean, you could say the same thing about blues. There are plenty of people, and I know of some who thumb their nose at that genre completely. And they're like, why would anyone ever want to listen to blues while they're driving around in their car? A lot of people do.
Yeah. Not me.
I think cultural groups and stuff play a part of that. I certainly know that there were some people at work that were very shocked to find me listening to Albert King the other day, which is really funny. They came down to my desk and they're like, oh, that's you? And I had, it was Friday. There was nobody in the office. I had my Albert King turned up. And it was like, it was you. I didn't know you listened to that kind of music. That's the music my parents listened to. And I listened to it too. And I'm just kind of like, well, I'm kind of offended that you would assume that I don't listen to this. But at the same time, it's like, well, all right, fine. Go away. Leave me alone.
Well, I think the offense is more, I think that people assume that straight up blues is for older people.
Yeah.
And, because let's face it, it's mostly my generation that still, takes a knee every time that they hear about the Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff. So,
I would think it definitely has to go with people who live through that.
Right. And I don't think, I honestly think I'm right around the tail edge of people who grew up wanting to play like those guys.
Sure.
And then, like, guys like you would actually kind of be more like, I want to play like the person who played like them. In other words, that
certainly. Certain people in my age group, a classic example is John Mayer.
Right.
There are, or Joe Bonamassa. There are plenty of people my age that idolize Joe Bonamassa as well. Which is really funny. And the John Mayer one just kills me. Because usually if they idolize John Mayer, they kind of look like him too. I've noticed this.
Oh my gosh. I gotta do an aside. I was listening to some folks that were posting stuff on Facebook. They're like, post your band playing. And this guy had a solo thing. Mm-hmm. And he was so worried about trying to get that ridiculous crap that Mayer will do with his voice. Now, that Mayer does, by the way, naturally. It's not a thing that he's trying to.
Well, he sounds a lot like fucking Stevie Ray.
No, I'm not talking about when he does that. I'm talking about his pop stuff, not when he's doing the blues thing.
So he's singing about your body is a wonderland.
Yeah, and you notice how he has a raspy high end. I'm gonna sing like this. Yeah. And his choice of notes up there, roll, to the minor versus going above. He comes in below the note, right. So on and so forth. So, very male Amy Winehouse-ish. And I'm tired of hearing guys doing that because it sounds like they're chewing gum while they're singing to me. And it's like, just freaking open your mouth once in a while, You don't have to worry about people making fun of you for opening your mouth and singing. But anyway, that's where I kind of get where, at least with John Mayer. Now you're a little older to look up to John Mayer because John Mayer's about your age.
He was coming up when I was 16, 17.
Right. So he's closer to your age. He's only a few years older than you are.
He's probably 35. He's like 2 years older than me, I think.
Right. Think about it. For me, Eric Clapton, let's see, I was born in 64. And Eric Clapton was already doing his things. So he's 20-something years older than me. That's what I'm talking about. I'm at that tail end of that. I would think somebody for you would be like, well, maybe Stevie Ray Vaughan, because, it's always what your parents listen to as well.
Right. Well, my parents never listened to him. By the way, John Mayer is actually 40, so he's 7 years older than I am.
Is he really?
Mm-hmm.
Really? I didn't think he was that old.
Yeah, he's quite a bit older than he looks. He's had some plastic surgery to keep his boyish
plastic surgery. Well,
yeah. So if he grew a beard, I could probably accept him.
Yeah, he hasn't grown a bit. Actually, I think that helps his age look because every time I shave my beard off, I take a few years off.
If I shave my beard, I look like I'm 9 years old. It's stupid. Yeah, that's why I don't do it.
And until only a couple of years ago when my hair started going gray on top, I could get away with shaving my beard and still look like I was in my 20s.
Yeah, I remember seeing you, pictures of you, because you posted a couple in the group or whatnot, and I'm like, yeah, you looked a lot younger there.
Oh, yeah. And
hair color
I could do a little Just for Men and probably get away with it for a little while longer.
Don't bother.
But, yeah, a little retina around the eyes, or what they call that, retinol. No. But anyway, but
my wife could do Botox.
I could go for that. Anyway, but I know that Botox is something you don't do it just once. You got to keep it up.
That's right.
And that's why I would never do it. But anyway, there's just that thing about here's the thing though, who was between Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and John Mayer?
Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
That's pretty much it.
Pretty much it, right? I mean, I'm talking about for blues guitar.
That's what I'm saying.
Yell at me. Oh, there was Jerry Cantrell, and there was Kim Thayil,
but those were not blues players. Maybe let's just say maybe Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
Yeah, I mean now for the shred guys, you had Metallica, you had Kirk Hammett, and you had Slash. And even though Slash is kind of blues based.
Slash is not a shred player. Slash is a dyed-in-the-wool rock player. I would put him in the same category as Angus Young.
Yeah.
Malcolm Young kind of.
Well, if you hear Angus Young play what he likes to play.
Yeah, he's a blues player.
He's a blues player.
Yeah.
And that's why his rock is so infused with blues.
Well, I think rock in general is infused with blues, and that's where I make the separation between rock and metal. I think if you infuse rock with, or if you infuse blues with classical music, that's how you get to metal. You know what I mean? And then rock is blues and more blues and some different tempos. Maybe a mix of blues and jazz.
I remember hearing or reading an interview with Angus Young, and he said that You Shook Me All Night Long was a country song. He said, we wrote that as a country song.
No, I could see that.
Because it's in the key of G.
Oh, my God. Just because of the key?
Just because it's in the key of G. You've got to realize it. That's what a lot of people, the haters of AC/DC don't like.
I've seen
pretty much an A or E and A, and that's it. And they use the key of G in that song.
I think I saw Brad Paisley play You Shook Me.
I can believe that.
Yep.
And I can believe that he would have done an awesome job.
Oh, he fucking killed it. I've also seen him do Hot for Teacher, which is also fucking stupid.
We should put that in the show notes. That one is incredible. I've seen that Hot for Teacher from Brad Paisley. That's a good one. But anyway, what was I getting? Oh, I was getting that when I was growing up, there were so many big blues-infused rock players. And you can call them blues players if you want. I still call them rock players. You had Eric Clapton. You had the fusion guys. You had excuse me, what's his face from Yes, Steve Howe. You had Jeff Beck. You had
the Allman Brothers,
Jimmy Page. You had
Duane Eddy and Duane Allman and
Dickie Betts. And you had so many, and there were so many styles of it. You could sit and you could listen to the Allman Brothers, which was a Southern infused blues rock with that, and then with a country twang almost. But then you could sit down and listen to "Give Me Three Steps," Leonard Skinner, and they didn't really sound like each other.
No. And the funny thing is, so our generation now would look at that song, "Give Me Three Steps," and I know because we had this discussion with somebody just recently. "Give Me Three Steps" sounds like a modern country tune, like something you'd hear from like the late 90s or early 80s, or late 80s, early 90s. It sounds like, like a George Strait tune or something. Or even who's the big guy? Garth Brooks. And I just laughed because I'm like, yeah, they ripped off Leonard Skinner because that's not what country music sounded like back then. Like it was a whole other thing.
Oh, country music back then, and that line of country. I mean, so one could argue that bluegrass was the true country music.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, I consider it more on the folk side, but yeah, I agree.
Right. So you had folk, which was and of course when I was growing up, you had Woody and Arlo Guthrie. You had the who were the guys that did. There was the Mamas and the Papas. You had John Denver. You had
sure.
Simon and Garfunkel. There were so many of them.
Right.
And, and then there were guys that were kind of in that realm that broke away. You had Neil Diamond and folks like that were kind of breaking away.
Keep Neil.
Yeah, you know what? There was a brief period in the 70s when Neil Diamond was a rocking son of a bitch. And then he turned into a poppy pile of crap.
Neil Diamond is one of the people that's on my list. And if we haven't talked about the list on the show, I have a list. It's a running list. There's a very small amount of people on him. If I'd run into him in person, I'd give him what for, and if they gave me shit back, I'd hit him in the face. And he'd be one of them. Because his music just drives me fucking ape shit. It's like
I listen to the
derivative
old stuff. No, I listen to the old stuff, and I really like it. I mean, if you think about it, Sweet Caroline was the first one that really did that.
Oh, yeah, you're right. But God.
I know. It's not his fault that it took off the way it did.
Well, it's not just that. It's his representation of himself on stage. Like, you want to play these quote-unquote rock tunes, and then you come out and you're, like, wearing your fucking shiny-ass coat and shit. It's like, what are you, Elton John?
Because he knows
he can't figure out what he is anymore. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Well, but I almost feel like he can't figure out what he is anymore. Like, he's just, like, stuck somewhere and doesn't understand.
Well, that's why South Park makes fun of him, too. Same with Barbie Streisand. I mean, she has a voice that would. I mean, for me, it's just heavenly, and yet people hate her because, let's face it, she did do.
What's the famous record she did with the guy from the Bee Gees?
Oh yeah, Guilty.
Yeah, Guilty, and they did Guilty 2 later.
Yeah, they did a second one.
Yeah, and they were both. I'm not saying anything about my orientation. They were both good records.
Yes,
as far as pop records go.
Yep.
So.
I loved them both. And again, I love Barbie Streisand.
I didn't say I loved them, but I said they're good.
I love both those. And love pop music, a lot of pop music, the older pop music. We could go into, was older pop music better than today's pop music? Again, you can't generalize it. Today's pop music is, for the most part, a big bucket of shit.
All right, can we talk
old stuff?
Can we talk about today's pop music for just a second? Because I had an astute observation the other day. In the late 90s, and like Britney Spears, actually really probably started with the boy bands, right? And I'm not going to go as far back as New Kids on the Block, because they were, I'm gonna say this, don't shoot the messenger. They were white kids put together by a studio for a project where they were hijacking the New Jack Swing sound, which is stereotypically a black culture form of music. And I would be remiss to say that there are not other great, artists doing New Jack Swing.
Was Timberlake? Was Timberlake part of New Kids?
No, Timberlake was way later. He would have been like 12 years old when New Kids started, or something.
Okay,
I
have no idea. Obviously, that went right.
Yeah.
Past.
So the reason why I say this is because right when we get to the end of the boy bands and like Britney Spears starts, right? Britney Spears was the boy band equivalent for the men.
Well, she was created.
I don't want to say men. I want to say teenage boys.
She was a teenage, a Disney teenage girl pop star. Which she was. Let's face it. If we go back to the '80s, we've got Tiffany. We've got who's the one that starts with a D? Crap. Anyway, the other Tiffany. Well, I can't remember her name.
The reason why I'm saying this is because there's a common thread here with. All right, so you have Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Mandy Moore, and I'm sure there's somebody else I'm missing.
Demi Lovato.
Well, no, right at that same time, these four started right there together, and then all of a sudden, like 12 or 13 years pass, and the music doesn't fucking change. If you look at pop music from the late 90s and compare it to pop music today, it has not fucking changed at all. At all. It's overproduced. There's a drum machine on the track. There's a bunch of synth sounds that are kind of like, I would say kind of like horns. There's usually some kind of crazy, corny beat going on underneath everything, which is why I say drum machine. And then you have a female vocalist, usually who's very, very attractive, who cannot sing for shit.
But you can auto-tune it.
Right.
She can carry enough note. She can carry a note well enough for auto-tune to work, because anybody that thinks that auto-tune can perform miracles hasn't used auto-tune.
Yeah, well, Melodyne, the modern equivalent, you don't even have to be able to sing anymore. It's getting to the point where you can literally just MIDI all the notes in and then just have them say whatever the fuck they want. Away it goes. But yeah, you would believe that they could actually kind of sing like that so that they can get it closer and make it sound more natural. But even so, now we have Lady Gaga. We have, which she's kind of an exception. And then we have who's the Katy Perry, who is a fucking straight clone of Britney Spears, and maybe with a little bit more talent. But basically, that's just so that they don't have to worry about her shaving her head and going off the reservation like Britney Spears did. Because that basically destroyed Britney's career. Whether like it or not, that and that thing she did with Madonna pretty much destroyed her career. And then so you've got her, and I'm trying to think. There's some other ones that are out there right now. Pink is one that's kind of defied that logic a little bit, but her music, that's the thing. As talented as she is, her music is very much the same as your Britney Spears, your Christina Aguilera, your Mandy Moore. The Mandy Moore record. There's a reason why she didn't. There's a reason why
Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga is a little bit different because she came from the gay club scene. So her music is very much more what I would picture from the gay club scene music. Another great record for that, if you guys aren't aware, Freddie Mercury did a record where he had some dancey songs on there. It's called The Great Pretender, and they're all they were aimed at gay clubs. That's
where Barry Manilow and what's her name? The Rose. Come on, the heck's her name?
I can't recall offhand, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, she did The Wind Beneath My Wings, The Rose, and all that. Yeah, he was her. Bette Midler, yeah. He was her piano player. Gay clubs in the 70s.
Right, and it's fine. Like, that's a legitimate form of music. It's a legitimate genre thing. But my point is that pop music has literally not changed in like the last 20 years. When Britney Spears hit in like 1998 to today, pop music is still doing the same damn thing it was 20 years ago. And it wasn't that way when you were a kid, Jim. It was every song sounded different in the pop genre. You might have one song with classical strings on it and a slow groove. You might have one song where you got some guy playing chains. You know, it's just a whole nother thing.
Right. Well, okay. So one of the folks that I follow, Rick Beato on YouTube, was talking about this. So I don't want to take credit for this. But one of the things that he mentioned, because he's written a number one song, co-written a number one song, and he's produced platinum albums. So he's a guy who knows what he's talking about. And one of the things he was talking about, as far as is today's music and the culture of musicians that get signed, is that they don't want to sign somebody they have to take a chance on.
Exactly.
So if you have a hit on YouTube, they'll pick you up. The Meet Me Outside girl that's got the Dee's Hose song, which is ridiculous. It's actually kind of funny, and it's actually Bad Baby. It's funny, and it's kind of a cute song until you realize that the girl singing it is way too young to be singing the words you're hearing. I mean, it's like seeing an X-rated film and realizing that the actress is 14. It just kind of tastes bad in your mouth.
It takes the wind out of your sails because it's like you should be a registered sex offender for watching it.
Exactly. And the people that put it on should be registered sex offenders. Only Arista Records can go ahead and do that because nobody's quote unquote getting hurt, which I won't even go into that. I just think
I think
if it was my daughter
for another day.
It's hard to turn down $1 million or $2, but she is a pro.
Put her right in the damn jail.
Yeah, it's too bad because I can see the future, and I just hope it's not the future that she has. But anyway, that aside, the thought that that someone, the record companies do a couple of things, because there's many ways to become a star now, right? You can go on YouTube, you can create a song, Rebecca Black, and then get a deal and never get any money from it. Rebecca Black, you don't know anything else she did, right? She was bad. She was not a good singer. No amount of auto-tuning could fix that nasally crap that she calls a vocal quality, right? But people listen to it. Now, you take that, but a record company signed her. Why? Because she was already a star.
William Hung.
Know they've got some. Yep, William Hung. Who was the other guy that Psy? PSY.
Well, Psy is a different story because he is hugely successful in Korea.
Yes, but his Western record deal came from the fact that hey, people already love this song. Let's get a record deal.
It had nothing to do with. They were like, oh well, he's going to write some great pop tunes for the U.S. audience. Like that was never the intention. Yeah. By the way, his music was in Black Panther of all things.
Yeah.
So
kind of weird. But anyway. So the record companies aren't taking chances anymore. That's number one. So if you're looking to get that way, that's not it. Now let's look at, I can go on American Idol because there's plenty of guitar players who can sing. Then American Idol got up there, right? So one of my Facebook friends, Jack Daly, played bass on one of the American Idol guys' songs, "Home," Scotty McCready.
Yeah. Okay.
And Scotty McCready hasn't done anything since, right? I mean,
so. That's the pop industry, though. They throw people away.
Right, but what they do is, this is the horrible thing. The people from American Idol sign away everything they would ever make for years. Same with The Voice, all those things. So, folks, if you think that that's a way to make money, you got everything coming.
No, a lot of those people. In fact, one of the ladies, I think she finished second. Yep. She ended up. She's like. She owns a restaurant or something. She doesn't want anything to do with the music industry because it's like, I can't make any money doing that.
No, because what they do is they sign a deal that signs away 5 years. If you think about it, 5 years is a huge amount of time for fame to go away. You can't take 5 years off. Mm-hmm. You can't even take a year off.
No.
That's why, and you've heard of the sophomore, crush or whatever they call it. Where
I think about it this way, Jim, and maybe this is the best way to spin this for our listeners, is that you're taking someone who has aspirations of having these great musical performances and, recording big records and all this stuff, but you're taking them out of the equivalent of like maybe they play a bar gig every weekend. That's not the same thing. They didn't work their way into it. And so you're just thrusting these people out there, and what happens is they fold. Right. They collapse. They can't handle it. Right,
because it's a lot more pressure. All of a sudden, it is a business.
Yeah. You had a day job. Now you don't have no fucking day job to put food on the table.
It is a very real business. And even if your day job was as a musician, you suddenly realize that you've got to do stuff you didn't like to do anymore. Yep. I mean, think about the guys from the bands like Tommy Two-Tone, The Knack. Every single time that they play, they have to do a certain song. And nobody cares about the other stuff that they do. Nobody.
So, to bring it back to that guy, Yngwie.
Yep. And Chris, let's give the writer some credit here. His name is Chris Brooks.
Yeah, Chris Brooks. You can get his book on Amazon. I'll post it in the show notes.
And Joseph Alexander.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Like, and even just looking through some of the other things in this book, I'm gonna have a lot to work on for a really long time. There's 100 and something examples. Many of the examples are, here's a scale that Yngwie uses, and and here's all the patterns for it. Enjoy. So you just got to work your way through it slowly but surely. Probably also want to pick up one of the song books so I can actually have some real world examples to work on as well.
Yeah, I'll grab the other one, the sweet picking speed thing.
Oh, I'm getting that too. But to swing, for sure. To swing back, and I'm better at sweep picking than I am at alternate picking, but to swing back around from pop music back to Yngwie. Here's a guy, and we're going to talk about Richie too. We got to get him in for the end of the show. Here's a guy that grew up in Sweden, idolizing Richie Blackmore.
Yep.
Deciding to pick up the guitar because Hendrix died, pretty much.
Yeah.
Thinking that I think it was when Hendrix died, he saw the footage of Hendrix burning the guitar at the Monterey Pop Festival. Just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I guess he was in a musical family, so he picked up a guitar they had laying around and he just played the shit out of it. And then he ended up dropping out of school. He was a huge personality problem for school. I think his family had money too. He's never publicly said that, but because and that's gonna tie into this next story. So when he turns 18, I think it's 18, he says, "Fuck it, I'm leaving Sweden because there's no way I'm ever gonna have a musical career in Sweden." So he flies to the United States with his, I think it was a 73 Strat, the one the Duckcaster, the one that he plays all the time. Yep. Flew to the United States with like $200 in his pocket. That was all he had.
Right.
And was signed very, very quickly, playing in bands within weeks and literally putting out records within months.
Didn't he quickly join, what was he?
He was in Steeler first and then Alcatraz.
Alcatraz, that's what I was thinking.
By the time he was in Alcatraz, he was so fucking well known that when he dropped out of the band and Steve Vai came in to replace him, people were like, "What the fuck?" They bought tickets to the shows, and he got Vai up on stage like, "All right, I'm gonna do my best," and they're like, "What the hell is this shit?" Even though Vai is obviously a very high quality player. Actually, Vai had an interesting conversation about that because they've since mended fences, but. In the beginning, he's like, I didn't really like Yngwie all that much because he's like, I got shit thrown at me and all this other stuff because of him.
Yeah.
But they've since mended fences, and actually, most of these shred guys now are pretty good friends because they play festivals and stuff together all the time. And he basically came to the States with virtually nothing. Although, don't act like he didn't have a safety net, because I believe he came for money. I believe his family's actually nobility in Sweden. So he could have just called home and been like, yeah, I need money. And somebody probably would have given him a ticket to come home. But the thing is, like he came here with that attitude, like I rock and roller broke, and it's one thing to hear about bands like Motley Crue that came from like I don't remember where they came from exactly, but like Midwest or Georgia or wherever they came from, and then going all the way to California. Look, this guy got on a plane, came to a country where he had to speak the language, okay,
right.
with no money. It wasn't like you, Jim. You went to countries where you didn't speak the language, but you were there with the military at least.
Right,
like,
exactly. I had a buffer. Yeah.
So I think he may have stayed with Mike Varney or somebody like that. Because I know he was friends with Mike Varney and that whole thing. But it's just it's a cool story. It's a rags to riches story. But then you go back and you look at his. And I think we talked about Richie Blackmore on the show before, but we're going to talk about him a little bit more right now. Richie Blackmore was. So we had at that time we had Jimi Hendrix because he really started in the late '60s with the early Deep Purple. There's an album called Book of Taliesin, which is like their early art rock days, and that's Richie on that album, and which is way more psychedelic than the Yardbirds. Like it's out there stuff. And then so you had at the same time Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, all these guys were going around the same time. Blackmore was one of them, but Blackmore was a lot more low key. And Blackmore did a lot of session work like Jimmy Page did. But so when Deep Purple's first record wasn't a hit, he kind of turned his hand and said, well, let's try something different, which is why they changed the lineup. And then they put out, I think it was In Rock. And In Rock is a seminal rock album. If you have never listened to it, I highly recommend all of the early Deep Purple stuff after Book of Taliesin up until I would say Fireball is probably the last great record.
Well, their first hit was like a pop song, wasn't
it? That was Book of Taliesin where they did Hush. But the version of Hush that's way more popular is the one that came off of Come Taste the Band or whatever.
Yes.
Like way later. So they've had so many fucking lineups in Deep Purple that they have a numbering and lettering system for knowing what lineup you're listening to.
Yeah, exactly.
So Mark II is the superior lineup, but there is a Mark IIA, B, and I believe a Mark IIC. And A, B, and C are the same lineup, but at a different time. Okay? Right. You want to look for the Mark II albums. And the funny thing is that Blackmore was such a fucking visceral player. I mean, his vibrato, his bending, his sense of note melody. I put him head and shoulders above the other guys that were his contemporaries. But the thing is, he was ahead of his time. So all the guys in the 80s were looking at Blackmore and going, that's the dude I want to be like. And they were playing like Blackmore. And I wish I could play like Blackmore. And I've worked really hard to kind of get towards the Blackmore style, which is why I fucked up my picking years ago. Because I used to pick Downward Slant, and I thought it was wrong because I figured that you were really only supposed to be able to have the pick 90 degrees to the strings, and that I was doing something wrong. And it was just a gut feel thing, and I wasn't getting enough articulation, so I stuck with 90-degree picking. That was like 15 years ago. So I trained it out of my system, the downward pick slanting thing. And I basically fucked myself for the last 15 years or so. So now I'm like, oh shit, I got to relearn all this stuff, which is why I demonstrated downward pick slanting for Jim right before the episode. And it was sloppy as hell. But Jim, I'm sure you could see that the potential is there and and that I will have that worked out very soon. But it's one of those things where even to just be sloppy at 195 beats per minute doing that is just stupid. Like, where does it come from? And that's basically an hour's worth of woodshedding. Not even that. I think it was probably a half hour. Yeah,
so Deep Purple was just here in town last night.
With Steve Morse.
The night before. Yeah, and which, I mean, it's fine. It's got Steve Morse, but I mean, people are going out there and they're like, oh, yeah. I'm like,
there's only two members in Deep Purple from the Mark II lineup even left.
Yes.
And that is Roger Glover, the bass player, and
Ian Gilliam.
Yeah, well, Gilliam, and Ian Pace, the drummer.
Yeah, Ian
Pacey or Picey or whatever.
So you got Ian. Yeah, you got Ian Gillan, and Ian Gillan, is it Gillan or Gillian? I don't know.
It's Gillian.
Gillian. So that was In Rock, Fireball, Machine Head, Made in Japan.
The stuff you think of when you think Deep Purple, you know?
Yeah. Come Taste the Band. You know.
Perfect Strangers? That is a fucking phenomenal record, Jim. Uh-oh. I think I've lost Jim.
Incredible.
Yeah. Perfect Strangers is a great record. Battle Rages On, which I believe was the follow-up to that, was not as good as Perfect Strangers. You want like 3 records if you're not a Deep Purple fan to get into Deep Purple. I can recommend you 3 right now: In Rock, Machine Head, and Perfect Strangers. Come on, if you got Knocking at Your Back Door,
Made in Japan.
Yeah, the live Made in Japan. It's one of the best live albums of all time.
That was such a great live album that when Iron Maiden did their live album, they did it. They called it Made in Japan so that they could follow up on that thing.
There's a perfect example: Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and Saxon, and all those British heavy metal bands, like the first wave of heavy metal from Britain. Yep. All of those bands owe their shirts to Deep Purple, and they all admit it. They all admit it.
They all admit it. You would not have had the dual guitar lineups, and that was a thing. You take two of the biggest dual guitar lineups in heavy metal, in my opinion. If you're going to take the top 2, it's going to be Iron Maiden and Judas Priest.
And you know the stupid part, Jim? These bands went the dual guitar. These 2 bands went the dual. No, nobody's going to fight you. These 2 bands went the dual guitar route because they were trying to emulate Deep Purple. And it's so funny because Deep Purple only had one fucking guitar player.
Yeah.
and he didn't even play the shit. Like, okay, so no humbuckers. Fucking no. Blackmore was a straight Strat guy, right? Scout frets. Gee, I wonder where Mel Machine got that idea from. Yes, Richie Blackmore did it differently, but I'm just saying the similarities here are just ridiculous. And if you ever get the opportunity, and I believe I've mentioned this on the show before, there is a VHS tape that it's like Yngwie Basics or something, and it's ancient. I think it was put out by Young Guitar in Japan, where he plays a couple of Deep Purple tunes, and he plays Demon's Eye, and he does this thing in the solo that just sounds like random shit, and it is literally on the record as random shit, and he can do it. Yeah. And it sounds identical.
That's just it, though. You're thinking, oh, that's probably not on purpose. The guy, it's just incredible. That's all I can say.
That song Black Knight's my favorite.
Yeah. But so in my opinion, when guys like Maiden and Priest, what they were trying to do was emulate the call and response and the playing off that Blackmore had with, what was the keyboard player, the B3 guy?
That would be Don Airey.
Yeah, Don Airey.
Yeah.
That was, you took those 2 guys, they were always vying for space because Airey wanted to stay with that psychedelic.
No, wait. So Don Airey was the guy that replaced him.
Oh, no, John.
John Lord.
Lord.
I feel so bad saying that now because, I remember that Don Airey replaced him. That's why I said it, but it was John Lord. Absolutely. John Lord is a fucking machine.
Oh, now, just incredible.
The funny thing was that John Lord, some of his greatest stuff, like off of Who Do We Think We Are, that record, he did Rat Bat Blue. There's like this solo in there that's like extremely fast. And I always thought that was him, but no, actually it turns out it was him, but they sped it up. They doubled it. So he played it at half speed and then they doubled it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. Like he was that on time and like knew what they wanted enough to actually write out that solo so that he could double speed it.
It's just funny that when I saw the interviews with John Lord, he was like, I didn't really want to go in this direction. When they got the Machine Head, because In Rock really kind of sealed it for him.
His organ playing is otherworldly.
Yeah.
I mean, and on In Rock and Machine Head and all those records, yep. I don't care if he didn't want to go in that direction. He created something by being frictional, something that people absolutely love him for. And yes, case in point, he was a classical pianist, and yep. he had written several pieces for orchestra, and he performed Deep Purple Concerto for small group orchestra, for small group and orchestra. That was the first Mark II lineup record, actually, and it was just it was a performance of his piece, which made headlines because like a rock band playing with the London Philharmonic.
Yep.
So,
well, if you look at it, they were, even though they were kind of contemporary, Yes was also doing that thing, but I think they got it from Deep Purple.
Oh no, I think Yes actually started right before Deep Purple, because I think their first record came out in '67.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking about the way that they moved, the direction that they moved.
Sure.
Later in the '70s,
because Yes definitely became a harder edged band.
Yes,
which was kind of interesting. I actually really like
But in the beginning, they were much more. They had a much more classical.
Sure. Even their harder edge stuff has a more classical slant to it, like closer to the edge. Yep. That record, Siberian Catcheroo, and all the songs that are on it. Oh my God! Like there's some heavy freaking stuff on there. They just didn't get heavy with the guitars. Whereas it seems like Deep Purple went heavy with guitar and organ. They were like, we're going to use an organ and make it sound like a guitar. And that was done completely on accident, which is a really funny thing. They didn't have appropriate amplification for John Lord.
Yeah.
So he was running through Marshall stacks.
Yep.
Which sound great. Actually, if I had a B3, I'd be running it through a Super Lead Plexi too. So
nobody would have ever thought to do that before him. That's what I'm talking about. It's those happy accidents that they kind of took with them and went to other bands. And if you look at it, you got Yes, you've got Asia with Jeff Downes, you've got bands like that. Again, they were contemporaries, but just like Clapton. Clapton was a contemporary of Hendrix, but he stole a lot of Hendrix stuff. He was like, "Wow, this guy's doing shit that I can't even imagine doing. Let me steal some of that."
It's funny because nobody stole from Blackmore for like 10 to 15 years.
Right.
And I think it's partially because nobody could steal from Blackmore for 10 or 15 years, that the state of guitar playing had not been raised to that level yet.
Well, I think that now this is a band that flies under the radar most of the time. I think of Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah, sure.
And Buck Dharma was doing a lot of that stuff. And Cult was playing New York City clubs at that time.
Yeah, well, and I've also heard him say that he was a large part of his playing to guys like Blackmore.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's okay. I'm not poo-pooing anybody who could have pulled it off. I'm just saying there weren't many of them. Like now you can go to Guitar Center, you can't stop staking a stick at somebody who can do Yngwie. So it's like, it's one of those things where I feel like the level of talent raises with each generation, and a lot of that has to do with quality teachers of the previous generation's music being available, making that material easily accessible.
If you listen to some of these guys that are talking about when they took lessons back then, if you think about it, taking a lesson back then, you walked in, you had a Hal Leonard a method book and an acoustic guitar.
Yeah, if not a nylon string.
Yeah.
And,
nylon string acoustic, even with action this high, and everybody, they were like, oh, well, if you want to play rock, you're not going to be good enough to be with us because we're going to teach you how to play, Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Well, they would say like actual music. It's like
real music. Oh, I'm sorry, but you want to use a pick. Oh my God. If you think bass players are bad.
And it's so funny now because when you go into like take a guitar lesson, like you're like, wait a minute, you don't want to learn rock music?
Yeah,
like, what the fuck's
it would be the exact
wrong
opposite.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck's
I'm sorry, I could not teach classical.
Yeah, no, there's no way I can't do that. That music is dead to me.
Exactly.
So,
but if you look at it, like I said, I just think that when it came to guys like Blue Oyster Cult, they were one of those under the radar bands, and they were doing that kind of thing. Because when Richie Blackmore's Rainbow came out, right in the what was that, late 70s, right? Early 80s.
It would have been, I think it would have been like 81, 82. It was like
Yeah,
between
'cause I
80
remember-
and 84, because that's when
Yeah.
they did Perfect Strangers, because that's when he came back to the band. So
Stone Cold was my favorite. I know that's probably not most people's favorite song from them, but that was one of my favorite songs from them.
I don't think they have any bad ones, to be honest with you. You know, the funny part is, so Rodney James Dio was part of Rainbow at some point.
Yep.
And Ian Gilliam from Deep Purple went over to fill in for Rodney James Dio in Sabbath for a tour.
Yep. That's what's funny.
They were just trading guys around at that point. Like,
well, that's like Newstead and Trujillo swapping places.
I can't blame Rodney James Dio for leaving Sabbath. I mean, they did light him on fire. So
yeah.
That pretty much says it all right there.
You know, Rodney James Dio, everybody that I've seen interviewed, there are very few people that will talk crap at that level.
Yeah, nobody says anything negative about Dio.
No. But Dio is one who would just, nicest guy. You know, he's like 5 foot. Well, he was like 5'4". You know, he's a very short guy, but one of the sweetest people that you'd ever meet, right? And yeah, like me, and because I'm only 5'6.5", so.
Oh, you would tower over him, Jim.
And
you'd tower over him.
Yeah, I would have towered over him by 1.5 inches. But anyway, the one person that you will consistently hear people say, I could not stand to be a band with that guy, Richie Blackmore. As good as he is, there's a lot of bad talk, and you can just those of you who don't believe me, just look at YouTube, look up interviews of people slamming Richie Blackmore. It's all over the place.
I feel like I'm a librarian of Richie Blackmore material. I believe the DVD is called Come Hell or High Water, and that was I believe it was actually the last show that Richie played with Deep Purple before leaving permanently.
So is that when the big blow up happened? And
he throws the water bottle at Ian Gilliam, and he stops the guitar solo for just a second to pick up a water bottle and throws it at the singer who's playing bongos up front, and misses him by a lot, but the water goes everywhere. It's just funny, and then you could tell he's just madder than hell, and then he just proceeds to get back in the solo, and he's fine, and then like gets to the end of the show, and it basically tells him like, I'm done. Actually, if I recall, he told them right before they went on stage that this would be his last gig.
Yeah, that was how they got the message. That's how they got the news. That I'm done.
Yeah, because
who's the bass player?
Roger Glover.
Glover. Yeah, Glover was saying how shitty that was, and I saw an interview with John Lord. Same thing. There was no love lost when Richie Blackmore walked away.
Well, they were not. Okay, now I know John Lord said he was not angry with Richie. Like he understood Richie probably better than the rest of them did. Cause they both had so much talent and they both felt like they were being constrained by these choices to stay in a specific genre and to do these things.
Yep.
So that's why Blackmore leaves, and what's he do? He goes out and plays Renaissance music with his wife.
Well, not before he does Richie Blackmore's Rainbow.
No. That was the first time he left, Jim. This was the second time he left.
So he did it twice?
Yes. No, he didn't throw the water bottle the first time. The water bottle was the final straw.
Right.
So but he quit in 1980 or 1979. And then went and started Rainbow, and then did 2 albums with Rainbow, and then disbanded that when they weren't commercially successful enough for his taste. And then went back and did 2 albums with Deep Purple, and then when that came apart, he left. And that was it. And then you had a slew of guitar players come through, Joe Satriani and a bunch of other guys.
But that was the point when he went off and did the
Renaissance music
with his wife? Yeah.
Well, so
Renaissance music.
So his wife is very Yoko Ono.
And she was the Stevie Nicks thing.
If you watch interviews with Blackmore today, which are very rare, you will see his wife, because she never lets him do an interview without her. And
You need to read the Guitar World, where they finally got him away from the wife long enough to get an interview.
Well, no. So when he decided he was going to return to rock music, he started doing real publicity again, and I think that maybe either the production staff of the record or the company was like, "Look, you're going to do this. She can't be involved." Yeah. Because she was the one that was going around saying like, "Oh, well, everything that happened in Deep Purple, it was so hard on Richie." And it's like, you weren't even there. You weren't even married at that time. How the fuck would you know?
You did. I think she was like 12 when Blackmore.
Yeah, because she's like, he's totally robbing cradles. Let me tell you that much.
Big time.
And I'm
talking about 12 when he went back.
Yeah, her whole thing, and you just get the sense that she's very much like the girl in Spinal Tap. Like, yes. Well, I know what he wants, and so we talk about it before he does it, kind of thing. And it's like, wait a minute. We're interviewing Richie Blackmore, not you. I don't care if you're the singer for Blackmore's Night. We're not interviewing you. Nobody cares about Blackmore's Night except for us knowing that Blackmore is in the band. Like, that's all they care about.
I just want you to know she was born in 1971.
Was she? So she would have been
in 1980. She was 19.
So you mean when In Rock came out, that meant
she wasn't born?
Yes.
Or no, she was born. Maybe.
I think In Rock came out in 1970, didn't it?
70 or 71.
Yeah. So either way, I mean, there's a very good chance that she hadn't happened yet. Okay.
Exactly.
So put that one into perspective. Yet she was to say that, oh well, the guys in the Mark II lineup were so mean to Richie. How the fuck would you know? Because Richie says so.
She was still shitting her diapers when that came.
Everybody I've heard do interviews out of that band, especially the Mark II lineup. And again, I'm kind of a librarian for them, and I have every record they've ever done. They've all been super nice guys. The only one that's a prick when he does interviews is Richie Blackmore. And maybe that's changed with age, but there was a time when they're like, who are you influenced by, Richie? And he's like, influenced? I'm not influenced by anybody. Like what the fuck? He's like, there are certain guitar players I like. He was like, well, who do you like? And he's like, Cliff Richards. It's like,
oh, Cliff Richards, okay.
Yeah. It was like, I get my guitar, or I get my vibrato from Cliff Richards.
The people, it's funny because the people in America are like, Cliff who?
All right. So
for the most part.
For the Shadows. Let me slap this one a little bit harder. So we got Yngwie, right? And everybody talks about how much of a dick he is. Where do you think he learned it from? Who is his idol? He acts just like Richie Blackmore.
Yeah.
Do you think he's really like this behind the scenes? Probably not at all.
Yeah.
He's probably just a normal dude, but he's like, I got to keep up appearances. It's the same thing. The guy from The Darkness said recently, he was working as an accountant in
was that
Justin Hawkins. He was working as an accountant, and this was right before I believe the thing called Love, so like a year or two before. And he's working as an accountant, and his coworker was like, "You mean you play in rock bands?" And he's like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "I'm a singer." He's like, "I'm a rock and roller." He's like, "I'm going to be a rock star." He's like, "You, a rock star?" And that's when he was like, "You know what? Fuck this." So he quit his job. He took up drinking. He decided he was going to gig every single night. And he basically lived being a rock star. I put him into rehab, in fact. He basically decided that the only way I was ever going to do it is fake it till I make it.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I started wearing the outrageous costumes all the time. And like, we would go, I mean, when I mean all the time, I mean like he would wear them to work and stuff.
Right.
And then he would, he'd gig every night. So it worked out for him. And I think Yngwie kind of has some of that similar mentality. I mean, you'd have to be really ballsy to just say, fuck it, I'm getting on a plane and coming to the United States. So there's these similar patterns between these two guys. And it also comes out in their technique. I am itching, and I will report back on this on the show. I am itching to find out whether Richie Blackmore practices downward pick slanting. Because they don't really sound much alike when they play unless you've heard Yngwie do blues. And then you're like, oh, now I get it. Like, he doesn't use the same style of playing, but he's a disciple of it. Right. It's whole thing. He's extricated what he needed from that style and assimilated it.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're at an hour 15. I think it's time to call it, Jim. I have been David.
I have been Jim.
And we are those practical guitarists.